Well, a big welcome this morning to our final in the series, The Call of the Major Prophets. And of course, in our journey, we've looked at the prophet Isaiah first, and then Jeremiah, then Ezekiel, and now finally today we look at the prophet Daniel. The prophet Daniel. And of course that means too it'll be our final Bible study on Tuesday as well for this. Perhaps to get us started, the opening 7 verses or so really gives us a good foundation for the journey of Daniel. So let me start with that passage straight away. Daniel 1:1-7. It says, "In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia and put in the treasure house of his God. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility, young men, without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude of every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after they were then to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel, the name Belteshazzar; to Hananiah, Shadrach; to Mishael, Meshach; and to Azariah, Abednego. Now, I realise when you're thinking, man, there's a lot of names there to remember. Well, those last 3, one of the things that help you remember them is just think of holidays. My shack, your shack, and a bungalow. Yeah. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. That passage has provided us a wonderful foundation just to get us started on this journey. Now, God's message, one of the big messages in Daniel, is that God is sovereign over all the kingdoms of the earth, past, present, and future. Now, actually, to some extent, Jeremiah and Ezekiel were contemporaries of Daniel, but let me talk about the differences. Jeremiah, he was based in Jerusalem, and although his message was to the nations, it was strongly to the Jewish people within Jerusalem and Judah. Ezekiel, who we looked at last week, of course, he was in Babylon, but a lot of his message was to the Jews that had been taken away into exile in Babylon. It was all to all the nations, but it was especially to them. Now, Daniel, especially we look at these first few chapters of Daniel, his message, he is in Babylon, but a lot of his message is actually to the Babylonians. You might say he's the most cross-cultural of all the prophets, of all the major prophets. Now, he served as prophet, spoke from 605 to 536 BC, thereabouts. I've been thinking about cross-cultural mission as I've been thinking about Daniel. Serving in a foreign land and doing it so effectively to people many of whom had no background of the one true creator God. And it got me thinking about the father of cross-cultural mission, as he's been sometimes called. Let me tell you the story of William Carey. William Carey. Let's have a look at a pic of him here. There he is. There's the old boy. Around a long time ago. So born in 1761. Passed away in 1834, having lived a very full life in the Lord's service. I want to suggest of this man, he was not just a missionary, but a visionary. Now, this guy was a Baptist pastor in the late 1800s, and he started to get an increasing sense of God's call that we needed to be doing more in mission. The British Empire was vast at this time, and he felt there was not much of a work going on in India, which there actually wasn't, despite the fact the British were very well established there. But as far as gospel, church planting and stuff, very little going on. He started to feel called. In fact, he was a part of a team that started the Baptist Missionary Society, which today is a huge missionary society. He was the beginning of that. In 1973, he set sail with his wife Dorothy and 3 children, and she had one on the way. Now, as you can imagine, Dorothy did not want to go. In fact, she fought it for a long time. Eventually, because her sister agreed she would go too, she did head off to India. And pretty scary, isn't it? The idea you've never been to India before, and at that time thinking of giving birth to a son there, you can see why she was freaking out. They had a doctor friend that assured them that Calcutta was very civilised, but you can imagine she was pretty apprehensive. Well, the first 6 years they were there, it was tough. They didn't see a single convert in that time. And although Carey had read up a lot about the cultural realities of India, nothing had really prepared him to actually arrive and see some of the culture. One of the things that really disturbed him, understandably so, was the practice of sati. Let me explain that. So when an Indian gentleman died, part of the funeral procession was often his possessions would be burnt. Now that included his wife. And so he saw early on, having arrived in India, a funeral procession. And this lady, she was a young woman. She was burnt alive. He tried to prevent it, but of course he was stopped. This was common practice at that time. And although in many ways the Indian culture was beautifully civilised and had so much richness to it, it also had some practices that really were quite barbaric. Well, you can imagine the culture shock when you witness things like that. Carey set about learning the Bengali language and translated the whole Bible into that language. He was very gifted in this. But the tragedies went on. After he'd been there about 6 or 7 years, his son developed dysentery so badly that he died. And the tragedy of losing his son was not the only one. From this point, it would be probably fair to say his wife, Dorothy, had a nervous breakdown and she never recovered. She would have fits of rage and anger and try and kill her husband, accusing him of being a murderer because the son died. Very, very difficult time, and she herself passed away a few years later as well. This did kind of wake up the missionary society that they needed more support. And so they started to send further people out to help them with their team. One of the chaps they sent out, he died within 3 weeks. So you're talking, it's not an easy field at that time. Two of the really key players who certainly didn't die was William Ward, a printer by profession, and Joshua Marshman. These guys were very strategic. Ward set up a printing company. And that Bengali Bible, that was mass-produced. And they continued to translate scriptures and tracts and so forth, and it's just going all out over India. Joshua Marshman was a school teacher. Another school teacher arrived as well. They set up a school. And the journey of setting up that school in a Danish colony called Serampore, part of India, but a Danish colony there. A lot of their base was in that area. These 3 guys became known as the Serampore Trio. And that was really quite strategic how they kind of operated. In 1800, they finally saw their first convert after 7 years. The school was set up. It was very popular amongst the British families, and they paid good fees to get their kids at the school, and that really helped the mission. Now, one of the wonderful things about the school was that, of course, they created a school for the Indigenous population as well. All sorts of young people being educated, and they did something else that was absolutely outrageous at that time. Girls could go to school as well. At that time, ladies were considered the place was in the home, cooking, cleaning, but certainly not education. That was really not considered important. They broke the culture by doing this, but it was very strategic. In Carey's lifetime, he translated 6 complete Bibles, 6 different languages, 26 New Testaments, and in total, there was 44 translations where at least a book of the Bible would be translated into various languages. So 44 languages in total. And of course, remember the printing press, these are just being distributed all over India. Revealing Carey's growing influence, he petitioned the government many times, and eventually they had sati abolished. Because of this kind of description I've given you here with schools, with a Bible college, they set that up as well and started training the indigenous Indians to become ministers of the gospel and pastors. Putting all this together earned Carey the reputation of being the father of modern missions. But you can see the guy was a real visionary too. Let me read 9 principles that we learned of stuff he did that became mainstream in missions from there on. Number 1, study the culture. 2, study and learn the language. 3, preach the gospel in all manner of ways. 4, translate scriptures, print and distribute. 5, provide education. 6, train indigenous pastors and as gospel preachers and Bible teachers. 7, stand for social justice. 8, become self-funding, which they did. 9, create missionary communities. 9 fantastic principles. Well, today, as I dig into Daniel, we're going to see 9 visionary principles I can also learn from him. Not the same ones, but 9 excellent principles. Just to give you an idea of William Carey's impact on India, 50 years after his death, there were some 500,000 Indians in young, vibrant Protestant churches that have been planted. That came because of this mission, 500,000. I know it's a slow start, wasn't it? 7 years for one convert. But 50 years after he died, 500,000 converts. A work with tremendous foundations. Well, one of the things that I want to highlight here about Daniel is we've seen the dramatic call of the other prophets. It was really, pretty crazy calls, wasn't it? Very dramatic, the first 3. Daniel's, which is helpful for us, is very different. Very different way of call. It was more like an unfolding of events and a kind of a process. Gradually, that the call of God on his life became clearer. I'm going to pick it up in chapter 2 now, but let me just give you the background. King Nebuchadnezzar, probably the most powerful man on the planet at this time, has had a dream. The dream disturbed him. It was vivid, striking, and enough to make him feel he needed interpretation. But obviously you don't become the most powerful man on the planet by trusting everyone. He didn't trust his wise men particularly, and he said, I want the interpretation of this dream. But so I know that what you're telling is actually the truth. You can tell me what the dream was, and then I'll trust the interpretation. And they're like, oh, no one's ever asked that before. You've got to tell us about the dream, then we'll give you the interpretation. He says, no, if you can't tell me what the dream was first, I can't trust your interpretation. Well, they protested, and he said, well, if you can't do it, I'm executing all of you. And just to give you an idea about this was a whole strata of society, the wise men. So this will be like saying, in the northern suburbs of Melbourne, we're going to kill the school teachers. We've had enough of them. It's a huge thing to make a statement like that. And, let me pick it up in 2:12-13. This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued and put the wise men to death, and the men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death. They are wise men also, quite young probably at this time. Daniel may have only been about 18, somewhere around there. But it's interesting. Here's Daniel. He arrives in a foreign land, probably comes across as a teenager. I mean, when Phil was talking about him, he thought he was probably only 14 when he got taken away in exile. He's young anyway, a teenager. So he's still young. It's only probably 3 or 4 years later. And so here's this young man taken to a foreign land, being educated in all the Babylonian customs and language and stuff. And now he's being told you're going to be executed along with all these other wise men. I mean, how do you cope with something like that? Far out. But can I make this point? Number 1, God's visionaries come to the forefront in times of intense challenge. Number 1, God's visionaries come to the forefront in times of intense challenge. We continue on, chapter 2, verse 14. When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. Notice that. He asked the king's officer, why did the king issue such a harsh decree? Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, notice this, Daniel went to the king and asked for time so that he might interpret the dream for him. Amazing, this young man had extraordinary confidence, didn't he? He decides he is going to go to the king, and we know the king's, he's a pretty, he's the sort of guy you would not approach lightly, would you? Anything could happen. He goes to the king with this measure of confidence, but you see that wisdom and tact he used with the king's other leader or servant. Now he comes to the king, and it seems that he must have used the same wisdom and tact, didn't he? Because we're going to find out the king listens. Number 2, God's visionaries exercise good interpersonal skills. Number 2, God's visionaries exercise good interpersonal skills. Verse 16 tells us this, that this Daniel went to the king and asked for time so that he might interpret the dream for him. Then Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed like the rest of the wise men of Babylon. It's interesting. It's just a little group of 4 of them, isn't it? There's not a big group of them, and yet they're going to meet with God. They're going to seek his guidance in this scenario. And, it's, one of the things we've been doing here at the church, actually, we've been doing a lot more of these little groups. It might be just 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, 7 people just gathering for prayer, intense prayer. Actually, Lucy showed up on, I think it was Thursday, wasn't it? Lucy shows up. We're actually conducting an interview because we've had to conduct some interviews for people coming onto the board. There's a little team of 4 of us conduct the interview. And so she arrived kind of just in between the 2 interviews, and we're all in there interviewing someone. And she waves at the window, and we thought, let's bring her in. So we stopped the interview for 20 minutes, and we said prayer is more important. Connecting with God is more important. And so we had a time of passionate prayer there just for 20 minutes or so. Well, these guys were men of prayer. They were men of prayer. Can I suggest this though? Number 3, God's visionaries expect revelation from God. God's visionaries expect revelation from God. The way Daniel talked, he was expecting God was going to reveal the dream. He expected him to. There was a sense of confidence about this. 2 verse 19 says, during the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven and said, praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises others up. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness and dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors. You have given me wisdom and power. You have made known to me what we asked of you. You have made known to us the dream of the king. Wow. And by the way, there's a lot of great passages of, isn't that a lovely little passage of worship there, that worshipful prayer there? I've got a folder, I just want a little black folder like the music folders. And what I've done is I've gone through the Bible and I have all these different passages of worship. And often in my times of prayer, I'll read passages of worship. The Psalms obviously have tons of them, but they're actually scattered throughout the Bible. Here's another one. Number 4, can I suggest this? God's visionaries are genuine worshippers. God's visionaries are genuine worshippers. Daniel, with all of his many qualities, sometimes you can forget this. He's a man of worship. Daniel 2:24 says this, then Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him. Arioch took Daniel to the king at once and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king what his dream means. Now, I find this interesting too. Daniel comes to Arioch and says, don't execute the wise men. We're going to learn later some of these wise men were not particularly favourable towards Daniel. In fact, they tried to arrange for his death later on. But he says don't execute them. Not just his three friends, you'd expect him to want to save them, but he wanted to save all the wise men. Can I suggest this? God's visionaries care about the misfortune of others. Number 5, God's visionaries care about the misfortune of others. 2:26 says, the king asked Daniel, also called Belteshazzar, are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel replied, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the days to come. And you notice that there. He holds right off and saying, yeah, I've got the dream, I've got the interpreter. He doesn't even say that. He says, no, none of us can do it. None of us can do it. But actually there is a God in heaven who can. I want to suggest this, number 6. God's visionaries bring glory to God's name. God's visionaries bring glory to God's name. That's a high priority for them. Let me just pop up an image here to talk about one of Daniel's many impressive dreams. As you can see, this was what the dream was about. There was this huge statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had seen in his dream, and in the journey of seeing this huge statue, God also reveals to Daniel exactly what it was all about. And the idea was this golden head was a picture of himself, King Nebuchadnezzar, this mighty nation of Babylon. But the time would come in about 536 BC when the Persian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, would take that over. And that's represented by the silver part of the statue there. And then after that, 330 BC, the Grecian time of Alexander the Great, that would become the dominant culture. And ultimately, around about 27 BC, Rome would become the dominant power of the time. Fascinating, this, isn't it? And of course, later on in the book of Daniel is when God reveals who these nations are going to be, in fact, and he includes that in his record. And it's amazing, really, because this happened well after his death. Persia came into power during his time, but not Greece, not Rome, and he named those nations. Prophetic word. Amazing stuff, really. Well, let's continue on. Oh, I should just say, shouldn't I? The big ball there striking the feet, of course, as part of the dream, ultimately that statue is taken out and crushed, and the Almighty God comes to be the ruler of King of all kings on the earth. 2:45, second bit of that verse says this. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true and its interpretation trustworthy. 46. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. The king said to Daniel, surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery. Now, we're going to learn that Nebuchadnezzar here, he certainly has there's a big moment where he seems as if he's come to believe in the one true creator God. I mean, he goes back on this again a little bit later on, and ultimately God has to do something pretty severe with King Nebuchadnezzar, strike him with insanity, and he hangs around like an animal for about 7 years. But eventually after that, he wholeheartedly comes to faith in the one true creator God. But it starts here at this point. Can I suggest this? Number 7. God's visionaries are effective witnesses. Number 7, God's visionaries are effective witnesses. 2:48 says this. Then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of its wise men. Wow. It's a huge step because he was a wise man in training, but he's a young man. He'd have been at the lowly positions of wise men at that time, and now suddenly he is right-hand man to the almighty King Nebuchadnezzar, the most powerful king on earth at that time. And suddenly he's in that massive position of influence. It's extraordinary. It reminds you of Joseph, doesn't it? He goes and interprets a dream to the Pharaoh, and next thing he's right-hand man to the Pharaoh. can I suggest this, number 8? God's visionaries may become people of influence. God's visionaries may become people of influence. William Carey, I was telling the story about, remember? He started off as a man of no influence at all. It took years, but eventually he started to have an impact on the Indian society so much he was affecting justice and seeing laws changed. Last point, 249. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, my shack, your shack, and a bungalow. Remember? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, chief ministers over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. You got it here? So he's got his 3 mates who he trusts. He believes they have great skills. They're now appointed. It's like, Daniel was the right-hand man to the king, and these are his 3 primary CEOs of various areas and various responsibilities. Tremendous team. But can I suggest we learn another lesson here? 9. As God's visionaries live their destinies, others are blessed. As God's visionaries live their destinies, others are blessed. We think of the Indian culture and through the work of William Carey, how ultimately, for the sake of the gospel, but so many other things, such as education, God brought about a wonderful holistic work in that country. Let me recap on what we've learnt today. Number 1, God's visionaries come to the forefront in times of intense challenge. 2, exercise good interpersonal skills. 3, expect revelation from God. 4, are genuine worshippers. 5, care about the misfortunes of others. Number 6, bring glory to God's name. 7, are effective witnesses. 8, become people of influence. And 9, as God's visionaries live their destiny, others are blessed. Over the last couple of weeks, I've listened to the book of Daniel several times. It's much shorter than the other major prophets, of course, so it doesn't take that long to listen to it. I mean, it's still an hour, but, it's shorter than the others. By the way, if you're thinking, Lee, I've heard you mention you listened to the Bible before. What do you do? Well, for me, I just type in NIV dramatised and the name of the book. And then it'll pop up and you're on YouTube and you click YouTube. Why use that one, NIV dramatised? Simply because it's actors playing the various characters, there's background music, there's some sound effects. It's just a little more dynamic than someone just reading the Bible. So NIV dramatised and the name of whatever book it is, and you're on YouTube. About 2 weeks ago, I caught up with Beth Jackson. She's the head of Mission Catalyst. Now, part of the Baptist denomination, they have different departments, 5 different departments, and one of them is for missions and church planting, local missions and church planting. And so Beth and I kind of hung out here for an hour or so, just talked about mission and, did coffee. And she doesn't do coffee, she does tea. She said, I'm sorry, I'm really weird, I know I do tea, but there are other tea drinkers in the church. Actually, Andrew, I'm about to mention in this story, is one of them. So anyway, we talked about mission and stuff, showed around the venue, of course, but then we spent about, I guess, a good hour and a half where we drove around all the northern suburbs, looking at all the new suburbs going up around the north. There's lots of them, isn't there? And so spend some time looking at all those and talking mission. But one of the things that she suggested may be really good for us, another friend of mine, actually Scott Pilgrim, who has worked for the BUV in different roles over the years, he's getting an Indian evangelist out very soon, mid this year. And Beth and I were kind of agreeing that probably the northern suburbs would be great if that would be his major focus. And so, that's something we could, hopefully we could see some wonderful fruit come from that. Now, one of the things you don't know about Andrew, who's potentially becoming a board member, Andrew's house is kind of subdivided and he has an Airbnb in the house. And Brett, who was in the interview process, actually said, well, couldn't that be a base for this misho coming out? And we all said, oh, actually that would work out really well, wouldn't it? So that's what we're praying into. So that's in mid-year this year. We could be doing a bit of missional stuff, and the hope would be, Andrew's happy to see an alpha or something run from his home as well. I don't know what the ideas are of the Misho as he comes out, but let's see what happens, and obviously we'll be getting him here to speak if we could try and run a couple of outreaches here at the church and draw people in, all that sort of stuff. So that's a little bit of vision there. Let's pray into it. The Lord may want more of us to play a part in being his cross-cultural missionaries and visionaries. Let me just say that again. The Lord may want you and I to play a part in being his cross-cultural missionaries and visionaries. Let's be praying into that. Well, I'm going to call Sue up to pray for us. Thank you very much, Sue. And we'll finish with some further worship. Thank you.
Oh, Father, lots in there this morning, and we thank you for it all. We thank you for Pastor Lee bringing your heart to us today. Lord, we thank you for your Holy Spirit, who will bring to our remembrance everything we need to remember. Thank you for the fact that we can go back online and see it again. Thank you for the pictures that we've seen. Lord, through this life we can bumble around and not know, but we thank you that you are the God who reveals, and you do not play games with our lives. And we are your people, and we can expect, like Daniel did, to hear from you, to receive direction. So we thank you for the word that we've heard today, and I thank you, Lord. I declare on behalf of all of us that we receive your word with gladness, and we want to act on it and eat it during the week and meditate on it and ponder it and do it and show us where we are to be active in this. And we thank you that you've called all of us, and we thank you. We want to do it in Jesus' name. Amen.